It was the kind of small town where everyone knew your name, your parents' names, and every mistake your family had ever made. I learned that the hard way. From the moment I stepped into the fire academy, I could feel the stares. They weren't just looking at me, they were looking through me, past me, to someone else. My father. 10 years ago, my father had been convicted of arson. They said he'd burned down an old warehouse on the edge of town. It didn't matter that the details were messy, that there were rumors about insurance fraud and other people involved. To everyone here, he was the man who set the fire. And to them, I was his son. Careful, one of the recruits whispered to another on my first day. That's the arsonist's kid. They said it like I wasn't even there. Like the label had already been burned into my skin. I kept my head down and focused on the drills, dragging hoses, climbing ladders, carrying gear that felt heavier than my entire body. But no matter how hard I worked, I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing against my back. Every time I stumbled, every time I made a mistake, I could hear it in their silence. Of course he failed. Look at his bloodline. But they didn't know me. They didn't know the nights I spent training alone until my hands bled, the morning runs before sunrise, or the way I'd been dreaming about becoming a firefighter since I was a kid. I wasn't doing this to prove them wrong, I was doing it to prove myself right. Still, it hurt. One evening, after a brutal day of training, I sat on the bench outside the dorm, staring at the fading sun. That's when Chief Wallace walked by. He was a tall, stone-faced man, respected by everyone in the academy. He stopped, glanced at me, and said, "You've got your father's eyes." I froze. I didn't know if it was an insult or an observation. But, he added, "You don't have to have his life." Then he walked away. I didn't realize it then, but those words would stay with me, echoing through the hardest days. The weeks dragged on. The drills got harder. The whispers never stopped. Every lunch break, I sat alone. Every test felt like a chance for them to confirm what they already believed, that I wasn't good enough. Then came the first real test outside the academy walls. It was supposed to be a routine training exercise with the local fire department, controlling a controlled burn in an abandoned building. But halfway through, something went wrong. The wind shifted suddenly, and flames roared up the side of the structure, cutting off 2 recruits inside. For a second, everyone froze. Then my body moved before my brain did. I grabbed the nearest hose, pulled my mask down, and ran straight into the smoke. I could hear them yelling after me, my name, orders to stop, but I didn't listen. Inside, the air was thick and hot, like breathing through wet cloth. I found the 2 recruits huddled against a wall, coughing, their eyes wide with panic. I grabbed one by the arm, signaled to the other, and we made our way toward the exit through the blinding haze. We burst out into the open air, coughing and gasping. The other recruits rushed forward to pull them away, but no one came to me. They just stared, like they weren't sure whether to thank me or question me. Chief Wallace walked over, his expression unreadable. He looked at the 2 saved recruits, then at me. "You broke protocol," he said. My stomach sank. Then he added quietly, "But you saved their lives." For the first time since I got here, someone said it out loud. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in their eyes, doubt that maybe the son of an arsonist could be something else entirely. But I didn't know then, that this was just the beginning. The real fire, the one that would change everything, was still ahead. The morning after the fire, Ethan sat in the station's kitchen, staring into his coffee. The whispers hadn't stopped. Some of the guys avoided his eyes. Others smirked, as if they knew something he didn't. He had grown used to being the son of the man who betrayed this town, but after last night's rescue, the tension felt heavier. The station's front door creaked open. A young woman stepped in, not the kind of person you usually saw in a firehouse. She wore a fitted blazer, her hair in a loose braid, and carried a leather satchel. Her eyes scanned the room with sharp curiosity before landing on Ethan. "Ethan Cole?" she asked, her voice clear and confident. He nodded cautiously. "That's me. Can I help you?" She smiled faintly. "My name's Claire Donovan. I'm a journalist. I'm working on an investigative piece about your father." Ethan's grip on the coffee mug tightened. "You've got the wrong guy. I'm not interested in talking about him." "That's funny," Claire replied, lowering herself into the chair across from him. "Because I think you'd want to hear what I've found. It might change how this whole town sees you, and him." Ethan studied her for a moment. Part of him wanted to walk away. Another part wanted to know. "What exactly do you think you found?" he asked slowly. Claire leaned in. "Evidence that your father wasn't guilty of the fire he was blamed for 20 years ago. Someone else said it. Someone powerful. And I think last night's fire might be connected." Ethan's heart pounded. "You don't know what you're talking about." She opened her satchel and slid a faded photograph across the table. In it, a much younger version of his father stood in front of a burning building, but the focus wasn't on him. In the background, barely visible through the smoke, was a man in a dark coat holding something that looked like a gas can. "I've been tracking that man for months," Claire continued. "He's still in this town. And I believe he wanted you to fail last night. Because if you fail, the old story about your family stays alive." Ethan swallowed hard. He'd never seen this photo before. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," she said, her gaze steady, "you've been living under a shadow that isn't yours. And if you're going to clear your father's name, you'll have to be ready for what you'll find." He leaned back, exhaling. "You think I care about what they say? I'm just trying to do my job." Claire smirked. "Then let me make it simple. If we don't dig into this together, they'll keep calling you your father's son, and not in the good way. If we do, maybe you walk into a fire one day without carrying his ghost on your shoulders." Ethan didn't answer right away. The weight of years of judgment pressed on him. He thought of the look in the eyes of the people he'd saved last night, relief, gratitude, and then recognition, as if they suddenly remembered who he was. Finally, he said, "All right. I'll listen. But if you're wrong." Claire's expression didn't waver. "I'm not wrong." Outside, the sirens suddenly blared. Another call. Another fire. Ethan stood, grabbed his gear, and glanced at Claire. "You're riding with me. If you want to understand me and my father, you start in the field." Her eyes lit with a mix of fear and excitement. "Lead the way, Cole." As they climbed into the fire truck, Ethan had no idea that this next blaze would bring them face to face with the very man in the photograph, and with a truth that could burn everything they thought they knew. The fire was raging by the time Ethan and Claire arrived. Smoke rolled out of the second-floor windows of an old boarding house on the edge of town. Residents were spilling into the street, coughing, their faces lit by the orange glow. Ethan jumped from the truck, scanning the scene. Two people still inside, one of the tenants shouted, panic in their voice. "Claire, stay back," Ethan ordered, pulling on his mask. But Claire was already lifting her camera, documenting everything. "I'll be fine," she called, though her eyes betrayed nervousness. Ethan charged through the front door, heat slamming into him like a wall. His training took over, low to the ground, steady breaths, listening for any sign of life. On the second floor, he found an elderly man half-conscious in the hallway. "Got you," Ethan muttered, hoisting the man over his shoulder. He led him down the stairs and out into the night air. Paramedics rushed forward. "Where's the other one?" Claire asked, still filming. Ethan was about to answer when movement at the far end of the street caught his attention. A man stood just beyond the crowd, half in shadow. The flicker of the firelight revealed a dark coat, the same as in the photograph Claire had shown him that morning. Ethan froze. Claire noticed his sudden stillness and followed his gaze. Her hand tightened around her camera. That's him. Before Ethan could respond, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into an alley. Ethan handed his helmet to a fellow firefighter. I'll be right back. Ethan, Claire started, but he was already running. The alley smelled of damp brick and old oil. The man's footsteps echoed ahead. Ethan pushed harder, his heart pounding not just from the chase but from the flood of questions in his head. The man stopped abruptly and turned. His face was older now, worn by time, but unmistakable, the same sharp jawline, the same calculating eyes from the photo. You've been looking for me, the man said calmly, as if they were meeting by appointment. Ethan's voice was low and dangerous. You were there. 20 years ago. The fire that ruined my father's life. The man's lips curled into a faint smile. Your father took the blame like a good soldier. It kept certain people safe. You should be grateful. Ethan took a step forward. Grateful? He died with everyone believing he was guilty. I've lived my whole life under that stain. The man shrugged. Life isn't fair. Sometimes, the truth is just inconvenient. Before Ethan could react, Claire appeared at the mouth of the alley, breathless. Ethan, the second victim, they didn't make it out. The building collapsed. Ethan's chest tightened. He looked at the man. Did you start this fire too? The man didn't answer. He simply stepped back into the shadows. Some fires, he said, are meant to burn away the past. Then he was gone. Ethan stood there, fists clenched, the smell of smoke and ash heavy in his lungs. Claire touched his arm. We can't let him disappear again. Ethan nodded slowly. We won't. But this isn't just about clearing my father's name anymore. This is about stopping him before more people get hurt. They walked back toward the flashing lights of the fire truck. The whispers in town had always haunted Ethan, but now he had a face, and a voice, to match the ghost of his family's ruin. What he didn't know was that the next time they faced this man, the truth about his father would cut even deeper, and Claire's life would hang in the balance. 2 days after the fire, the town was still buzzing. Rumors spread quickly, about the cause, about the shadowy man seen nearby, about Ethan chasing someone into an alley. But there was no official report, and no one had been arrested. Ethan sat in his small kitchen, staring at the photograph Claire had given him. He traced the outline of the man's coat with his finger, his jaw tight. Claire arrived with a folder under her arm. I think I found something, she said, dropping it onto the table. Inside were copies of old insurance claims and fire department reports. Ethan scanned them. This is, from the year my father was accused. Look at the names, Claire urged. Several properties burned down in suspicious circumstances. Different owners, but the same insurance company. And guess whose signature is on the payouts? Ethan's eyes narrowed. The man in the photo. Before they could discuss it further, Claire's phone buzzed. She glanced at the message and froze. It's from one of my sources. They say there's going to be another fire. Tonight. Ethan pushed back his chair. Where? She hesitated. An abandoned warehouse near the docks. But it's not just about burning the place, apparently, there's something inside they want destroyed. They agreed to go together, but when they arrived, the warehouse was eerily quiet. The only sounds were the distant creak of ships and the lap of water against the pilings. Inside, moonlight filtered through broken windows. The air smelled of oil and dust. Claire lifted her camera, but Ethan's hand shot out. Stay behind me. A faint rustling came from the far corner. As they moved closer, a small beam of light from Claire's flashlight revealed stacks of crates, some marked with the same insurance company's logo. This is it, she whispered. Evidence. But before they could open one, the sound of a match striking broke the silence. Flames flickered to life across the room. Ethan spun around. The man from the alley stood there, holding a flare. You just can't leave the past alone, can you? The fire began to spread, licking up the wooden walls. Smoke curled toward the ceiling. Ethan! Claire shouted as the man threw the flare onto the crates. She ran forward, snapping photos, but a beam above her cracked loudly. Ethan lunged, pushing her out of the way just as it crashed to the floor in a shower of sparks. The man was already backing toward an exit. Walk away, he called, his voice almost casual. This will all be over soon. Ethan ignored him, grabbing a crowbar and prying open one of the crates. Inside were file boxes, each stamped with official seals and dates, proof linking the man to years of arson and fraud. Claire stuffed as many photos as she could into her bag before Ethan dragged her toward the nearest door. The heat was intense now, the air almost unbreathable. They burst outside into the cool night just as sirens wailed in the distance. Claire coughed, clutching her camera. We got it. We finally have something solid. Ethan glanced back at the burning warehouse. He knows we have it now. Which means he'll come after us. Claire met his eyes, determination in her gaze. Then we hit him first. The orange glow reflected in her pupils, and for the first time, Ethan felt like the tide might finally be turning. What they didn't realize was that the man already had a plan to make sure they never got the chance. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of his phone buzzing relentlessly. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. Still chasing ghosts, Ethan. The voice was calm, almost amused. It was him. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. If you think you can scare me. Oh, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to give you a choice. There was a pause, then the man added, Claire is with me. Ethan's pulse spiked. What? She's safe, for now. But that depends on you. Bring me the evidence you stole from my warehouse, and she walks away unharmed. Refuse, and, well, accidents happen in this town. Before Ethan could reply, the line went dead. He threw on his jacket and rushed to the small apartment Claire rented, hoping she was there. The door was ajar, the lock broken. Her camera lay on the floor, the strap torn. His stomach sank. The next call came 30 minutes later, instructing him to meet at the old train yard by midnight, alone. Ethan knew it was a trap, but he also knew he couldn't leave Claire in the hands of someone who had already killed to protect his secrets. That night, the yard was cloaked in fog, the rusted skeletons of train cars looming in the dark. A single light flickered in one of the old maintenance sheds. Ethan approached slowly, the file box clutched in his hands. Inside, Claire sat tied to a chair, a strip of duct tape across her mouth. Her eyes widened when she saw him. The man stepped from the shadows, hands in his coat pockets. See, this is what I admire about you, Ethan. Loyalty. Unfortunately, loyalty can be exploited. He gestured toward the box. Set it down and walk away. Ethan's mind raced. If he gave up the evidence, years of corruption and deaths would stay buried. If he refused, Claire might die. You think you're in control, Ethan said, his voice low. But you've already lost. The man chuckled. Really? Ethan took a slow step forward. We made copies. Every document, every photograph. They're in the hands of people who will go public the second anything happens to Claire or me. The smile faded from the man's face. You're bluffing. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he dropped the box at his feet and glanced at Claire. Her gaze was steady, telling him to hold his ground. Then came the sound of distant sirens. The man's eyes darted toward the door. You called them, he hissed. No, Ethan said, Claire did, before you ever found her. That's why you've already lost. The shed door burst open as uniformed officers flooded in. The man bolted for the side exit, but two officers tackled him to the ground. Ethan rushed to Claire, cutting the ropes from her wrists. She pulled the tape away and breathed out shakily. "I knew you'd come." He squeezed her shoulder. "Always." Outside, as the man was shoved into a squad car, he threw one last look at Ethan. This isn't over. Maybe not, Ethan thought. But tonight, they'd taken back the upper hand. And for the first time in years, he felt the weight of his father's tarnished name beginning to lift. 2 weeks later, the city buzzed with headlines about the arrest of Gregory Vale, a man once untouchable in business and politics. Ethan and Claire had given their statements, handed over every copy of the evidence, and watched as a long chain of corrupt officials began to unravel. Yet, for Ethan, it wasn't over. One afternoon, he received an invitation to a public hearing. Gregory's lawyers were attempting to discredit Ethan's testimony by dragging up his family's past, his father's criminal charges, the scandal that had destroyed their name. Claire wanted to go with him, but Ethan shook his head. "This is something I need to face alone." The hearing room was packed. The press was everywhere, cameras flashing. Gregory's lawyer stood and, with a smirk, said, "Ladies and gentlemen, before you believe a word this man says, remember, his father was a convicted felon. Like father, like son." The room murmured. Ethan felt that familiar sting, years of being judged for something he hadn't done. He stood slowly. "Yes," he said into the microphone. "My father was accused of crimes he didn't commit. He died before he could clear his name. People decided I was guilty by association before they ever spoke to me. And for years, I let that define me." He glanced at Gregory, who looked amused. Then Ethan's voice hardened. "But here's the truth, a man's worth isn't inherited from his family's mistakes, it's proven by his own choices. I've spent my life trying to help people who had no one to stand for them. And when I saw someone willing to destroy lives for power, I stood against it. Not because I wanted recognition, but because it was right." He placed a folder on the table. "Inside is the full record, evidence my father was framed by the same network Gregory worked for. Today, I'm not just clearing my name. I'm clearing his." The room went silent. Even the judge leaned forward. Gregory's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The prosecutor opened the file and read silently, then nodded toward the judge. Within minutes, the court moved to formally acknowledge the wrongful charges against Ethan's father. Ethan exhaled, a weight finally lifting after years of silence. As the crowd dispersed, a small voice called from the back. A young woman stepped forward, the girl Ethan had once saved as a child, now a respected doctor. "I always knew you were a good man," she said, her eyes shining. "That's why I became a doctor. You inspired me to save others, the way you saved me." Ethan smiled faintly. "I never even knew you remembered." "I remembered everything." She hugged him briefly before leaving, her words echoing in his mind. Later, outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed him with questions. He said only one thing. "Never judge someone by their past. You don't know the battles they've fought, the lies told about them, or the truth they've carried alone. Give people a chance to show you who they really are." That night, sitting on a quiet park bench with Claire and his loyal dog Archie at his feet, Ethan felt something he hadn't in years, peace. And as the city lights flickered in the distance, he finally believed it. The past doesn't define you. Your choices do.